Northeast Credit Union.
All right,
So,
everyone, I think
nice.
we...
Yeah, I enjoy that.
We'll wait a second
It's
here.
good.
It's great to stay
Sit down.
involved in.
Keeps me very busy.
Look at that, and Talia. All right, we'll wait a second here. Got everyone? All right. Welcome, everyone, to the November 13th, 2024 meeting of the Portsmouth Conservation Commission. First item on the agenda are the approval of minutes from the September and the October meetings. Does anyone have any edits they'd like to pass on to Kate for either of those months? Nope. Seeing none, would someone like to make a motion? We can vote on both of them at the same time.
I will make a motion to approve the minutes of the September meeting and the October meeting.
I'll second that. All in favor? Great. Next on the agenda is the State Wetland Bureau application for 1 Pierce Island Road, which is the Portsmouth Fish Co-op. And I don't think we have anyone here to speak to it, and we didn't last month either when we postponed it. So we are out of time, right, Kate? And we do need to make a recommendation to the state, one way or the other, approval or denial, and we can give as many stipulations as we want to the state with our recommendation. But that's unfortunately kind of where we're at, not being able to ask any questions.
I was going to say, you can also do nothing at all if you want that option, neither approving nor denying,
Which would do,
in case you just can't make up your mind.
Okay.
That is an option
okay,
for the state application.
okay.
Then, like, what's the implication of that, though?
I mean, I think we should go one way or the other so we can submit kind of our concerns and our stipulations in that letter. I guess if we vote to not recommend anything, can we still even do stipulate? I feel like that's
No.
very ambiguous. I think we should go one way or the other and just voice our concerns in what we would have asked them as questions, probably. Go from there. So, I don't know. I guess we're already in discussion. Should we make a motion first, I guess, or just discuss and then make a motion?
You can do either.
We'll what are people's thoughts here on this? I know there were some concerns. If anyone wants to talk about those, we can figure out what to do.
Sure.
I think we should at least discuss those
Yeah.
concerns, yeah.
And get them down on paper. All right, so what did people have as concerns or questions?
Wasn't there a concern regarding, I remember someone bringing up, and I noticed it, but maybe not as much, on the back side, or I'll call the side that was facing the water, the runoff control and
Yeah.
such, and it was I remember the comments were that it was already very limited space and something to that effect. That's one that I recall that seemed like maybe it couldn't be addressed, but it should at least be noted.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I might have brought up something like that, that the limit of work is such that it's not really part of this application, but that as they continue to do work, or maybe if there's something else coming down the line, that looking at the location of the driveway, because on that side that you're talking about, it's very close to the water, doesn't seem to need to be that close as a result of this work, because they're taking footprint out of the site. So, again, I'm not really sure what we could say about that other than, future work or, redoing the driveway or something if there's a future permit.
Yeah.
Looking at that,
Yeah, to widen that buffer in some way.
yeah.
Wasn't there something about the runoff as well? It wasn't just the proximity, it was the runoff and how the runoff wasn't treated.
That's
and
what I
just-
recall. too.
Yeah, untreated,
Yeah, it
kind of
was-
sheet flow directly
Yeah.
into the, yeah.
Yeah, because it was more a parking area now rather than a rooftop, which is totally different contaminants. So,
There was also, I remember us having at least some discussion about the new building wasn't going to be as substantial as the present. And at least to me, it wasn't entirely clear. I believe the front section was the portion that wasn't being rebuilt, at least in the same way. And I think we had some discussions about how is that going to be utilized in the surface up there relative to parking and turnaround? Am I recalling it? Something
Yeah.
along those lines.
The part that they were demolishing,
Yeah,
I
the
think
part
they were
that-
just, it was gonna be gravel until they had enough money to pave it. That's
Yeah.
what it sounded like, and it was just gonna be parking and,
Yeah, and I don't recall if there was any
yeah.
concern. I remember us just, that being one of the things that we talked about.
I mean, I think the concern was that's a lot of pavement.
Yeah,
I think
yeah, a lot of-
besides that,
A lot of surface.
yeah. Yeah, maybe any opportunities to break that up even a little bit with, like, God forbid, a tree or two in the middle of it, I don't know.
Totally. Moving along the sides.
Yeah.
I was going to say that on the site utilities plan for a specific comment, that in the notes, it says, it's like under notes number 11, it says turf, 4-inch topsoil seed, fertilizer, and mulch for maintenance on the, not maintenance, but for installation afterwards. So they were going to fertilize the area.
For what part of the property?
Uh,
Is that where they're currently parking, that area?
No, I'll have to
It's like, where are their grasses there?
I know.
Just along the edges.
Let me figure out the page.
And you said fertilizer too?
Yeah, it was the fertilizer part
Yeah.
that I was like, it's in the shoreland. So, site.
So really, there should be no fertilizer use, I feel like, on any of that property.
Yeah, it was just over the grassy area over by the existing shed, so
Okay.
said they were gonna have turf, 4-inch topsoil, seed fertilizer, and mulch to that area.
Okay. So the caution is, don't use fertilizer
Yeah, and
mostly?
that would be definitely a direct comment for DES to
Yeah.
consider. Yeah.
Little notes, number 14.
14.
It says it.
Any other comments or concerns that we would have directed towards them if they were here to?
Well, if you look at the map, it does show that it's the highest ranked habitat in New Hampshire. And so if there are if there are large amounts of water runoff, whether it's rain or whether it's rain that picks up
Yeah.
oil because that's where the boats fill up or empty or dredge, has there been any kind of potential impact study, or and if there is afterwards, there needs to be some kind of mitigation for that?
Seems like that's a lot of the things we're circling around are kind of very similar. It's like, I think we'd like to see just a stormwater management plan on site to the extent
Yeah.
that they can, given,
Yeah.
given the constraints. Get as far as you can.
Did
Because
they
there are things they
present-
could do, right? It just costs money to actually install.
Was there one in here at all?
I don't think so.
No,
All right.
I mean, they don't, it's because they don't have to do
Because they
one.
don't have to, yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, we
it's
could
like,
still,
that's what he said at the site too. It was like, oh crap.
if that's because they're not adding any impervious area, yeah. But it's,
We can still,
I think we could still encourage.
It doesn't stop you from making things better.
Right.
Totally. I mean,
And I think, the expression you used, the stormwater management plan, really encompasses all of our concerns. And having something written down
That
and
addresses, yeah.
addresses that seems to be a really good starting point.
I mean, and maybe it's something they do in partnership with the city, like just to think about it and maybe propose something that could be
Yeah.
added at some point.
Please. Yeah.
It's probably worth, I'm glad you brought up the significance of that location, and it's probably worth adding that
Yeah.
to the thoughts on,
Highest ranked
on the runoff, yeah.
wildlife habitat, yeah.
you know, in one way it might work as a comment that could be legitimate is that because of the MS4 permit, I'm not sure about fish piers actually, but there's all these different, types of land uses that fall underneath that have to do stormwater management plans. So maybe we can just reference that.
So does the fish pier have to,
Yeah, it's probably
Yeah,
considered
cooperate with
industrial
that.
or commercial or something, yeah.
Yeah, right. So she can, at least they can double check on that.
yeah.
I mean, and it's in their best interest, right? And these are steps that will protect the fish from
That's right.
contaminants,
Well, that's true, exactly.
the warming that happens with all the runoff.
Yeah.
But I'm comfortable kind of approving it. I mean, I think it should probably move forward.
I think, I feel like either way, if we recommend approval or denial, I think what's more important is what we're requesting that they do. I think our notes are more important, but.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. Do we have anything else we want to add before making a motion?
Sorry, can you say that again? I didn't.
Anyone else have anything to add before making a motion? Okay, would someone like to make a motion then?
I'll make a motion to approve with stipulations for a stormwater management plan that they can either develop on their own or work with the city to put into place for the future.
And then I would also add the note about the fertilizer, because,
Okay, yep. No fertilizer use on the property.
yeah, as referenced in CS 101, number 11.
And I don't know, Kate, how detailed you are when you write this letter, but I think maybe when we say, needing a stormwater management plan, just making sure we talk about whether or not that MS4, if it falls under the MS4, and just kind of those details of things that concerned us as to why we want a stormwater management plan.
Yeah, I
Which we
can
were just talking about.
detail those all out.
Yeah, that'd be great. Do we have a second?
A second.
Second? Okay, are we ready for a vote? All in favor? Great, okay. It's the best we could do. Next on the agenda is the State Wetland Bureau application for 333 Borthwick Avenue.
Hi, Brendan Walden with Gove Environmental Services, here to discuss the project. The project is kind of tied to a previous portion of the property project with the oncology expansion unit. We did a site walk last week to go and kind of look at the site. The overall scope of work was to address the drainage issue that is occurring on the property, backing up water flow from the Liberty Mutual property to the south of it, I think south of it, as well as to improve that connectivity. Initially, we had proposed to dredge the entire drainage swale that surrounds the hospital. It was going to amount to, this really large overhaul of material and impact to that area. So to be less invasive, attempt to address the hydrology there, we determined that the best course of action initially was to try and improve the flow through a culvert replacement there. So the existing culverts are there are 3 24-inch culverts, and we're proposing to replace it with a 25-foot long by 10-foot wide by 3-foot tall box culvert. The culvert, to address the hydrology, the culverts, as you saw during the sidewalk, seem to be a little high, so it's proposed to be buried about 1.5 feet lower than what the existing culverts are. It's relatively a straightforward project. There's a little coordination that has to go on with Unitil, which is the reason for the access, so they can access their utility. I believe it's a gas pump that they utilize over there. We received comments from Fish and Game, some recommendations from Fish and Game, which included a time of year restriction. The restriction pretty much limits us from April to October for the work, so it's likely it'll be done in the summer during a dry time, or as dry as it can be, and you really never know these days. And then we did receive an RFMI from DES. The RFMI was pretty much clerical items addressing the coordinate system classification on the plans, needed a wetland stamp, and a couple of other minor items. I believe that's, I mean, as far as permits go, it's a pretty straightforward. Improve the hydrology, improve aquatic passage, kind of things better on both sides. So happy to answer any questions.
Great. So I think what we discussed in the field is we would vote on the DES permit and then kind of do
Workshop.
work session for the CUP.
Yep.
And then if anything changed coming out of the work session for the CUP that needed to then be changed in the DES permit, I guess you would go for an amendment, is that right, to the DES permit?
It's one of two things. So we have 60 days, because we received the RFMI, we have 60 days to respond or request an extension depending on their timing with the conditional use process. If there are going to be, serious changes to the plans, we'll hold off until there's actually a, approved submittal. I don't know, it's been a while since I've gone through the Portsmouth conditional use process since it went online. So I'm not too sure what significant changes might occur.
So maybe it makes sense to do the work session for the CUP first, and then based on what we talk about with that, decide whether or not you want us to go forward with the DES.
I think we talked in the field that you guys have to go through because you already requested the extension.
Okay,
And the next
got it.
meeting wouldn't. So
Okay.
as far as DES is concerned, it's more or less, do you object to the project?
Right, and then we can, okay. So then, should we do a work session first to kind of like discuss everything? Would that be the best way to
Sounds,
do it? I don't know, it's a little,
yeah, I'm not sure how much.
I mean,
horse before the cart or whatever.
The general discussion and premise of the, it would really be if the Conservation Commission has any significant concerns related to water quality, water or degradation of the wetland as a whole, and as it relates to any kind of jurisdictional statutes that DES has control over. So if it's just in relation to, we think the crossing should be sized big enough, they'll pretty much go back on, well, it's sized appropriately for a Tier 1 stream crossing.
Yeah.
So if you want to go through the DES portion first and then work session, I think that would be more
Okay.
beneficial.
Okay. All right. Does anyone have any questions about this project? We'll start there.
I had a couple of questions.
Go ahead.
Sorry.
No, this is- yeah.
Sorry, Brenda. So, and just to clarify, it's probably in there, but I just was trying to clarify that it's going to remain dirt on top of that? It's not going to be paved for the crossing?
I will ask that. My guess would be that it would remain dirt since it's right next to their pump station. I don't believe there's I would have to go through and read the construction notes to see if it's going to be paved, but I don't think there's supposed to be any changes there.
Okay.
Well, there's stuff that's going to be buried. Didn't we just, in between
Yeah.
the culvert and the surface that people drive on, that there would be buried lines and things?
Yeah,
So-
as there are now, but those lines they're pretty, to my understanding, they just service the hospital, so they're not like big gas pipes. They're just single, like general commercial development gas lines.
Do you want to keep going? Or I can interject a question.
Well, my other one was, there
Yeah.
was a little porta potty there. Is that going to remain there?
My guess is that would be related to any kind of construction activities occurring at the hospital on the outside. I don't know. I don't know what else it would be for, to be honest.
Okay. Go ahead. Or whoever.
My question was, how much, is there significant flow in there, like significant velocity ever, such that there is scouring of the banks or any type of erosion? It didn't really look like it when we were out there.
Based on the density of the vegetation, I wouldn't imagine that there'd be that kind of significant velocity.
Yeah.
I know that during construction, they're going to have check dams on either side, as well as a bypass for water.
Yeah.
But it didn't, my guess is that the whole primary reason for this is because there is a significant flow from either side. So once that's addressed, based on the hydrologic information that Bowman put together, it's kind of demonstrated that it won't drain either, or have significant hydrologic impact as far as the capacity of the wetland. So I think it shouldn't really be an issue.
Because my follow-up to that question is, the banks, I thought I saw that the banks would become riprap out to a certain point on either side of the culvert. And I guess my question is that necessary or can they just be, revegetated?
Do you know what sheet
No, of course not. See if I can-
Sorry.
And
'Cause
my
I know
thing
that-
froze, so.
I know that they had proposed grading. I don't think that they had proposed any kind
Okay.
of riprap. I know that there was an outline for the green stuff, the green boxes on sheet C3-00.
Let's see here. See.
Yeah, so it looks like it's just supposed to be grading, and those green rectangles, those are like the cofferdams that are going to be temporary to be removed after construction's completed and everything's stabilized.
Okay. So then how is it gonna be revegetated?
I believe that's on the following page, and I think it's jute matting to be maintained, just side slope stabilization. I know that there's some management of the bank right now on either side, general landscaping, but I don't know if they have any kind of, to my knowledge, it's not supposed to be let go to natural to totally revegetate.
It's not the plan, or
I don't believe so.
to let it go back to what it was, you're saying?
It probably to go back to what it is right now.
Okay,
But right now, it's grass with, if you're looking at the crossing on the left side, it was grass and some small emergent vegetation. On the right side, it was more persistent vegetation with like cattails and stuff kind of growing on the bank.
yeah. So they're not planning on, I'm sorry, I cannot find the sheet that I'm looking for.
There was grading notes on,
Page 109 in the packet for this project.
in C2002.
Okay. Okay.
Can I ask
They do mention fertilizer
What's that?
as part of their
Yeah,
revegetation plan.
several places.
Barbara?
You said they do mention fertilizer?
Yeah, you do on a lot of the sheets. CO-01, C200. And I just had a question along with what Samantha was asking when you were talking about the blankets.
Yes. The jute mat stuff?
Yeah, what is that made of? And
You can get a couple of different kinds. Some have welded plastic, and some have, I believe it's like coconut husk type or woven biodegradable material. I believe the Fish and Game recommendations say to use environmentally friendly matting in order to avoid any snakes. That's one of their typical comments anyway these days.
yeah, I just would ask that you add that as a detail in the spec, in the sheets.
For the no welded plastic? Okay.
Yeah, just.
While we were there, you mentioned that it was this, it's not dredging, but this kind of canal is related to the wetland that's the other side of the road.
Yes.
Is there, or do we know if there's going to be any impact, like increase in water flow from the wetland because of that additional flow that's going to be not created but possible through the new culvert?
I don't believe it's going to backflow. It flows from, as I observed it, it flowed from across the street to down slope. I don't believe there's going to, it's not, the way that we have to kind of prove this out is that it doesn't have any observable negative impact to any upstream wetlands or properties, and as well as downstream. It wasn't flagged as one of the comments from DES, so I don't deal with HydroCat a lot, but I believe that the materials provided by Bowman were able to prove that. Otherwise, it would have come up as a comment.
So,
To have
has it been researched or not?
No,
'Cause it's
no,
not clear.
no, not the, I don't believe that, the only thing that was looked at as far as that southern wetland was the entire drainage area for what is being you know, what is going through that culvert. That's really not that one specific area. It would be similar to looking at like one of the Liberty Mutual ponds. I understand the size differences is there,
But everything's connected. We can't look at that drainage without, especially knowing that it's connected to the wetland the other side of the road, and say, oh, we don't need to look at it because it's not part of the project.
That was one of the issues that was brought up by, his name slips me again. I remember his first name, Dave.
Devosis?
Yes, yeah. He was saying that area is causing, that there's flooding being caused by our drainage area because it's not accepting that water. So the idea behind this is to improve that, not necessarily drain it, but during storm events, accept more water. If that, as far as what its specific hydrologic contribution is to, and how that will be affected, we've not looked into it.
And rather than drain it, has there been any consideration given to increasing the amount of water that can be absorbed by that area through plantings or anything else?
Not in that regard, no. As far as trying to mitigate by just water consumption from vascular plants, no.
Thank you.
Yep.
Other questions?
I'm going back to a topic we already talked about, but there is an apron, riprap apron.
Yeah.
Maybe that's what you were referring
Maybe that's
to.
what I was, yeah.
In the last sheet, I think I saw
Yeah.
outlet protection.
And then the dimensions are actually not very easy to decipher.
It's on the last sheet for the plans. Yeah. Our far left. Up, yeah.
Yes. Can you help us understand that?
I wish I could, but because I don't see, typically that is called out on the drawings. And I don't see where that is called, or is supposed to be called out. It's not. I mean, in most drawings that I come across, if you call out riprap apron protection, it's in the legend and is shown on the plan as to where it's supposed to be.
So this is this is like a detail
Yeah,
that doesn't actually exist in the plan, but
it's possible.
just sort of a template that you guys use or something?
The drawings were provided by the engineer, so I would have to confirm with him if he's intending to have a riprap apron or not, but based on the drawing on the prior page, that does not show up. If a riprap apron was required due to any kind of velocity issues, and if there are any plan changes to this, we do have to go back to Fish and Game to just make sure. If he was proposing riprap, they would probably come back and say, we want smooth river stone or something, just more turtle friendly.
Yeah, I mean, I guess, maybe you can, like this diagram here that we're looking at,
Yep.
there's the kind of the gray lines at either end of the box culvert. Are those just depicting the areas that are going to be regraded and they're going to use that blanket?
That's my understanding. They do have a legend on this page, as far as what things are supposed to be, and that is EC2, permanent stabilization, is what they call it out as. It's in the second box down. Yeah. It's that EC2. They also call out outlet protection, but if you note, it's not shown anywhere. So I'm not sure if it's just a kind of a copy and paste error on the drawings or not.
Did Go put this application together, or was it a different?
We put the application together as far as what the impacts were. We didn't go through and design the
Okay.
actual crossing.
So do your impact numbers reflect a riprap? Do you know?
The impact area, as far as the permanent impacts, those numbers were taken from what the engineer told us they were, and tried to kind of relay those from the plan. The engineer's from Kentucky, so they're not 100% familiar with the process and what we consider temporary and permanent impacts. I don't know if it's just standard practice that they put riprap at the end of their culverts or not, and just don't show them on the plan.
The engineer has to be New Hampshire state certified.
They do.
Okay. They are, I think.
Oh, no, I don't, I thought that was a question. Sorry.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh.
Well, I would hope, even if they're from Kentucky, they would know what they're doing. Kindberg.
I know that they are, I believe they're a professional engineer. I just don't know if they're up to spec on what's required for the state permitting stuff.
I had a question about the invasives that were there. So on one side there of where the culvert's going to go, I can't remember which one was worse.
Are you talking about the?
Phragmites in the wetland,
Yep.
and then I think it was the cattails were in the swale in the.
It was kind of a
Drainage
mix.
ditch.
It was it's a mix on both. There's cattails and phragmites throughout that entire ditch, as it's present across the street as well. And then on the other side, to the right of the crossing, there's also, I mean, it's not as prevalent in some areas, but it's definitely present on the site.
So there's no mention of it in the plans that I could see, of any kind of attempt to control the spread of it, or.
I don't believe that it's part of our proposal. Given its prevalence in the area, it's not something that we can really control. I mean, we could maybe occasional cutting, but with proximity of everything in the area, it's not it's an invasive species.
So I think that to me, it kind of goes along with the questions about vegetation, and not any details really on that, what you're going to be planting and, if there's any attempt to just not let the invasives be on the banks, the new banks that you create at that point, and that you have something that you're planting to avoid that, and what that is.
Any other questions? Okay, does someone want to make a motion for discussion purposes? This is for the DES wetland permit.
Okay.
I'll make a motion to recommend approval of 333 Borthwick, with probably some additional stipulations that this group will decide on during discussion.
Do we have a second?
Yep. Second that.
Second, okay. So the stipulations that I have down, I guess the things we talked about, I don't know if they're really in stipulation form yet, would be no using of fertilizer, is that? And then making sure the jute mats are not the variety with welded plastic, so the biodegradable ones. Figuring out whether or not there is a riprap apron or, that showed up on the detail, but not showing up on the plan, and was that, if there is one, is that calculated in permanent impacts? And I guess we probably wouldn't want one unless it was necessary, would be my guess. And then issues about invasives popping up on the new raw bank are the ones that I've written down. Does anyone have any other ones?
I'd like to have some idea of the impact on the whole system, because looking at it as a piece without considering the impact on the wetland that is
Yeah.
upstream doesn't seem to make sense.
In terms of hydraulics,
Yeah.
hydrology?
Yeah.
Barbara, you mentioned whether the surface would be dirt or paved at the surface.
Yeah, so clarification in the plans on that. Thank you. And I guess,
I think there was a detail for the top of the culvert showing, there it is.
thank you.
Re-gravelled and compacted. So
Okay.
it looks like it's 1.5 foot of compacted gravel backfill on the
Okay.
top.
Great.
The only other thing that I could think of for the riprap apron was for the dewatering. Because when you're bypassing that, it needs some kind of protection. I can't find it in the plans right now, but that's the only other thought that I had on it.
Okay.
As a temporary kind of thing.
Yeah. And probably in the uplands, not directly distributed into the wetland.
So two things. One, with the fertilizer, I think maybe the best way to do it is to just make a note that that the notes in the plans again do not include fertilizer application. But I had a question about the riprap on the bank. Did we all decide that wasn't going to happen?
It sounded like there was no riprap on the bank.
It doesn't look
It
like it
wasn't.
on.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just gonna remain as graded
Okay.
work. to me.
we don't need that
Mats are
clarified.
going.
Yeah, that doesn't be.
No, because then when I looked, you see the detail of the, yeah, I think, yeah.
I think it's all the way at the end, sorry. Yeah, there you go.
The dark gray lines, I think, are that matting.
Yeah, I think it's just grading. It doesn't, to my knowledge, it would be kind of an outlier from what's there right now. Aesthetically, it wouldn't match what those banks are.
Yep.
So we don't need to comment on that?
I don't think so. I think the point of clarification is the apron they're showing the detail, but it's not on the plan, because it doesn't show anywhere on that plan riprap.
Okay.
Which is what I was confused about at first, but. Anything else you want to put in this letter about concerns?
Just to clarify, I am seeing on that drawing where it says EC1, so that's calling for outlet protection, and then it calls on that detail with the apron.
Yeah, but but it's not on the, like,
There's no, the
Plan.
legend.
Ron,
Yeah.
but it's probably too small, I don't know.
yeah.
Anyway.
So you're right, it
It's
is called out in the
calling for it.
legend.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Anyway.
This is the erosion control plan. So whether that's like a temporary solution to get the construction done, or whether that's like a long-term installation, it's a little unclear to me.
Yeah, it does say upon completion of grading and bypass pumping operations, so it does make it sound like it is a permanent and not just a temporary. So it would be nice to see
Where and how much.
where and how
Yeah.
big, and is that really necessary, given that there isn't, like, huge concern for erosion?
Well, we do think there's going to be some dredging
There's
on
going to be
either side.
there's going
right?
to be reshaping of that channel to go back. So there's a plan. The initial design of this crossing, not crossing, but the whole channel had an initial design slope. So the idea is to, in this area, bring it back to that original channel depth and everything, to kind of reestablish that. I know that I think on the bottom right side, it kind of developed a little hole there, and I think they're gonna just reshape that so that it's more streamlined and not just a hole on the other side of the culvert.
Anything else anyone wants to add or talk about? We'll have another opportunity during the work session part.
Procedural kind of thing, and I don't know, this is sort of me just talking off the top of my head, but it seems like there's a lot of things, a lot of conditions we have on here.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it's better to approve or deny in a way with the conditions, because they're still going to have to do what they have, they're going to still approve it eventually, but I just don't know. We just have to, if we have all these conditions, make it
Yeah.
clear that even if we approve, that these are stipulations, and that doesn't work as well on the other end as it does for us, but.
I mean, we would probably put all these stipulations, we would want all these to be addressed in the CUP.
Right.
So if they're addressed in the CUP ultimately, then they would have to potentially amend maybe some of the plans that then would have to be amended in the DES permit? Is that?
If they're impacts, they're gonna have.
Yeah, if it makes any changes to the impacts or the overall design of the culvert replacement, then we have to go back to DES and say, hey, we got a plan amendment. It's got to be less than 20%, given the size. It probably would be if there's any impact changes. Otherwise, we'd have to go and reapply. The other thing is that the conditions that Fish and Game issued are based upon the plans that they received, which were these. So we would just have to resend those plans and say, hey, here are the new revised plans per the town process. If you guys are still all set with this, please let us know. Otherwise, we'll have to provide additional coordination.
Okay. Because the only thing that would, I think, potentially change the impact amount is what's going on with those aprons. Right?
Yeah, as far as permanent impact, yeah.
Are the dredging numbers included in the impact numbers right now?
Yes, I think the two sides add up to 1,600 square feet, and then the permanent impact for the widening was 750 square feet. That was also one of the comments in the RFMI, is to label the plans more easier to read for the impacts between temporary and permanent. So we'll have revised plans there as well.
I mean, we could also put as a stipulation, like pending our CUP permit, right? I don't know.
Yeah, pending additional changes. Yeah, to the CUP.
Give them a heads up that maybe something. Yeah, okay.
Do all the comments and that.
Yeah, and that, okay.
More the better, because it's a comment that comes back sometimes.
Yeah.
I don't have enough information.
Okay. So then are we ready to vote on the DES permit? Which is right now a recommendation for approval with the stipulations we talked about, which is the fertilizer issue, using the non-welded plastic jute mats, invasive species, hydrological impact, all that stuff will be in the letter, and then also talking about our CUP process.
And the labeling the
Yep.
riprap if it's.
Yeah, and figuring out what impacts that is and if it's even necessary to use. Okay, so then
Did you mention the holistic?
Yep, hydrological impact on the prime wetland on the other side? Yeah.
Thank you, yeah.
Okay. All in favor? Okay. All right, so then I think we're just going to discuss the same things for the work session for the CUP.
Works for me. Easy enough.
Yeah.
It's got to be the same.
So, yeah, that we would, we need to see a plan that shows where that riprap apron is going to be. And, if possible, not have it at all.
Right. If it's required, we'll change it over to just smooth river stone as typically recommended by Fish and Game. Just,
Okay.
but that'd be determined based on any kind of velocity flows that he has in HydroCAD that say, we need some kind of protection for storm events.
Okay. And then in terms of the invasive species, Barbara, what would you like to see there? Is it just so that it doesn't, stuff should be planted so that the invasives don't take root?
Right,
Try
and,
to-
yeah, so more information about what's going to be planted, so specifics on.
Just a landscaping plan for just the areas of disturbance.
Yeah, so
Because-
wherever else that you've got vegetation that's going to be growing there again later. And then some acknowledgement that, best management practices to avoid spreading,
Yep.
and maybe reference, I don't know, DOTs or whatever.
They have a roadway maintenance
Yeah.
BMP for that, for invasive species, so.
Yeah, and, and definitely clarifying that they're not going to, there's going to be vegetation and just the,
Don't plant knotweed, is that what you're asking?
don't, yeah, and then the note about for us, definitely the stabilization blanket or whatever.
Yep.
What material and stuff.
And Stuart, in terms of looking at the overall hydrological impact on the prime wetland, would that just be looking at kind of these same engineering kind of flow rates and stuff to see kind of what's being pulled out when they do this
Yeah.
dredging?
Is it going to impact the wetland? Is the wetland going to dry out?
Right,
Because we need to keep that wetland.
okay. Yeah, so I guess kind of looking at those numbers that were run, kind of, I guess, to get what they wanted the slope to be and how much they're thinking is kind of being
So the
pulled
initial,
out.
the only thing that we really looked at, to my knowledge, as far as what was the contributing watershed, and not necessarily directly what that wetland is contributing. My guess would be that the primary bottleneck there would be the one, the culvert from Borthwick Ave.
Makes sense.
And I believe, I thought it reconnected across the street again from another location, but could be mistaken.
I'm not sure, but I know that the prime wetland across the street goes under Borthwick into that stream around the back and into the Pine Tree Island back here.
Yep.
And then Liberty Mutual is supposed to drain through that
Yep.
as well, but it's been backing up those two ponds right here. So I guess if there are any, like, flow calculations that were done, it would be good to know to see that actually replacing the box culvert is going to do something as opposed to the original plan, which was dredging.
It would definitely, based on the size of the culverts that are at Liberty Mutual versus what's going under Borthwick Ave, the Liberty Mutual ones are larger. So we would expect to have a more impact as far as, you know, successfully having the drainage that they anticipated when they designed their ponds. I think the limiting factor for that prime wetland would be, again, it's your Borthwick Ave crossing, but it's certainly something that I can see if the engineer can get some numbers for, to make sure that typically with like an AOT project, we have to prove pre and post flows, leaving the site and on the site, but it doesn't require an AOT, so we're just going based off of, can the crossing handle the 100-year storm? No, what is it? Or the 50-year storm? No, what does it necessarily do to a wetland offsite?
Yeah, and that's where I think I have questions. It's we're running off assumptions, and it's great that there's extra flow, but is that extra flow going to impact the wetland? Because it's upstream.
Yeah, if you suddenly put a bridge there, is it going to totally
Yeah.
drain it? Yeah, yeah, I absolutely get it. So
Thank you.
I'll see what they can do.
Yeah, and, you know, any numbers they have, and then putting it into some sort of narrative to kind of explain what they think is going to happen based on those numbers would be
Perfect.
helpful.
Yeah, I would think that'd also be helpful to understand if it's successful or not as compared to the dredging project that we're trying to avoid. So I'm just trying to establish like a baseline, I guess, and then figure out if this was enough or if something else had to be done.
The only, as long as I've been involved in the project, the only thing that we were able to be told is that there is a problem, not necessarily what's causing. It's just an assumption that this area, this drainage area, is a contributing factor. So they wanted to see if this would improve it. I mean, the dredging to bring it down, it would have been a significant task to maintain. I mean, the biggest issue with that, of course, is trying to dredge without having, creating turbulent water downstream and having sediment impacts. It's a pretty large scale project. I think we were talking 40 or 50,000 square feet of dredging, and not with an unknown volume. And from what I believe they did in the existing conditions plan, they had some topographical readings with, in plans that I had seen. It wasn't too far off from what was initially proposed. Maybe a high point here and there, but not like areas where you're seeing these 2-foot sediment piles. But I can also, with the conditional use, we can provide those as well, just so that you guys have an idea of what we were seeing through that channel. And I think I can probably dig through your files again and get the original, so we have a comparison.
That would be helpful. Thank you. Does anyone else want to add anything else they'd like to see when they come back? Yeah.
So since we're now talking about the buffer, I'm thinking
There's more?
top of bank, a potential for vegetation up there. And, I mean, in normal situations, we would ask to have a couple of bushes or something planted along the edge, especially on that side where it's all dirt at this point, you know, not to take away space from maybe where they turn around or whatever, but just to, when the construction, when everything's done, to have something up there to mitigate some of the runoff. Because there's this dirt that goes right down the bank with no vegetation from the top down. So you have like a photo on photo 5-3, culvert entry to the east. Situations like that, and to look at opportunities, a couple opportunities to put some woody vegetation along those areas, or, you know, what works out to be appropriate to protect them a little bit.
Yep, we can look at shrub plantings, as long as they don't, I think the main concern there would be any long-term growth may impact, you know, access, just.
Right,
Nobody
maintenance.
wants, yeah.
Yeah.
So just, it would, those kind of plantings, depending on proximity to the road, would come with maintenance.
Yeah, which is the other part of it too, that I was going to say on the other side by the road, if, you know, there's any opportunity to change the maintenance from mowing constantly to twice a year or whatever, to allow for maintenance for the drainage ditch, but because there's just this grass that's there now that they obviously mow. I mean, there's a fire hydrant and things that need to be accessed. And I'm not talking about woody, you know, vegetation, but just letting it grow up more.
I can double check on that. I don't know if there's any like issues with the hospital.
Right.
Just being a hospital, having long grass, and maybe whatever other contributing factors might be, but I'll
Or even
ask.
just moving the cut line,
Yeah, moving the cut line further,
so
you know.
they don't mow as close to
Yeah,
that
if they
vegetation.
need to have a pathway or whatever.
I can
for
see-
people to
Yeah.
get out of their cars and
We
stuff.
can see what the buffer is, and it'll just see if we can move it closer to the road.
Yeah, any opportunity to expand that, I think, would
Yep.
be. Yeah, now we're talking about the buffer, yeah.
I know.
Anything else? Okay, I think we're good.
Perfect.
Do you have any questions for us?
I don't
Yeah, do you have something else?
believe so. I mean, ideally, they would they would like to do nothing at all, but it's this whole thing is tied to their oncology approval.
Yeah.
So, anything.
Barbara has one other question, sorry.
No, that's okay.
Okay, so the level of the culvert, the bottom of it and everything, I know I brought this up at the site, but if there's opportunity to talk to Fish and Game about the possibility of putting the river stone, what you're doing, maybe whatever you do with the apron, but to have that extended into the culvert, and to allow some higher areas for, because since there's the turtles in the area, and there's so many times that you talk about aquatic passage, and it would be great to take it that extra step. I mean, that would be.
I'll see if that's something that we can.
Yeah, see,
provide.
I mean, I know that in some situations, they'll put like a foot of material in the bottom of a whole concrete culvert that has a bottom. And, you know, because you said you can't have an open bottom on this because
No,
of the gas, so.
they've kind of strayed away from that. They found that, from what I'm hearing from engineers, pretty much the flow can undercut the footings, and yeah.
So this would avoid that and at least create some kind of passage, so. Did you-
Well, I was thinking about our wetland placards.
Oh, yeah.
Whether there's a place for that in this project. It'd be nice to put them around
Yeah,
the.
So we have placards that show where, is it where the buffer? Or is it-
Usually the 25-foot.
They're usually placed at the 25-foot buffer, kind of sporadically throughout a property. It might be a nice opportunity to put some here, just so people are aware that this is a more sensitive area.
I mean, we can, I don't think it'd be an issue, but
And you can get them from the city, they're just like this
it
big
just
and-
says sensitive wildlife area
Yeah,
or something.
basically.
Yeah. And I guess strictly as it relates to, would that just be for the limited disturbance? Just say sensitive area, or are you talking about the entire larger wetland
Yeah.
feature?
I mean,
That's,
That's a good point. For the wetland conditional use permit requirements, one of them is that you're supposed to mark out where these markers will go on your site plan. So they are required permanent boundary markers, but we've sort of gotten into the habit of identifying, like, application by application where the best place to be for those markers would be. So I'm not sure if we would want the whole stream back there next month, or just something along that culvert edge, or if we want to go all the way to the wetland in the back, or how crazy we want to be. But I think at least pointing out a few spaces on the plan along at least that big parking lot in the back.
I think particularly where there's mowing happening, because seeing those placards too, if we put them on the line where we want them to not mow, might help as
That
well
makes
to
sense.
define that.
Good point.
if you go up to the existing, or down to the existing conditions, I think it's down. Oh, no, sorry, it might be up. Oh, no, right, yes, I believe that's, so some of those areas are outside of the project area. They're in pretty close proximity to the existing parking areas. So I just don't, we could probably effectively put some in the vicinity, but then there are areas where the wetland is, pretty much on the parking lot.
Yeah, so then it probably wouldn't make as much sense to do it there.
The
I
other
think-
markers would be in the middle of the car park. Which doesn't make
Yeah.
much
Just
sense.
traffic cones
Yeah.
with signs. Yeah.
Yeah, I think at a minimum, kind of the area that you're working in,
Yeah.
and then if there's opportunity to go further upstream,
Yeah.
right, up towards
'Cause
the
I think
prime
it-
wetland, where there's grass areas, I think that would be,
Yep. We'll probably have to
Good.
limit it with proximity to the helipad.
yeah.
We'll take a look and see what we can add in there.
Yeah. Okay, anything else? Rest now, speak now, for everyone, please.
Don't give
Okay.
us a chance.
We're good.
Perfect.
Thank you very much.
All right, thanks, guys.
Appreciate it.
Have a good one.
Okay. Last thing on the agenda, we have the State Wetland Bureau application for Whidden Street.
Good afternoon. Mark Batchelder, City of Portsmouth. We put in this application for, I can give you a little quick history again of how we got here on this project. This was a roadway reconstruction project that we completed in 2018. Prior to that project, on Whidden Street, the entire street was shaped like a V, with a low point on the center, and at the end of this road, there was a catch basin that took in all the stormwater runoff and put it directly into the sewer main, and that was the only way for any stormwater runoff to get off of Whidden Street. As part of this project that we completed in 2018, we repitched the road to one side, installed a catch basin just uphill of property number 50, and put in a oil water separator there. That then had a drain line that went into a new dry well structure on the low side of property number 50. That structure has an open grate similar to a catch basin, And the intent of that was to essentially take a 2-year rainstorm event and utilize the dry well to try to infiltrate that 2 years. Anything greater than a 2-year rain event would end up coming up through the grate and then flowing down. The original design was to flow down the city right away and then out to the South Mill Pond. What's happened over the last few years is the rain events have been enough to essentially topple over the side of the curbing that we have provided, and the runoff no longer goes in the city right away and actually cascades into the property at number 50 Wooden Street into their private property. So as part of this, we've gone back a few times to try to shore up the curbing on the side, some other minor improvements. They don't seem to have been working, so our current proposal is to tie into that drainage structure, the overflow structure, and install approximately 40 feet of drain pipe to discharge closer to South Mill Pond within the city right away. That way ensuring that any of the runoff would not go onto private parcels and stay within the city right away. So that's kind of our proposal for this. I know we did a site walk last week and talked over so you guys could also see the types of constraints that we were dealing with how narrow the right-of-way is, how steep the right-of-way is, and that sort of thing, that this we felt was our best option to move forward on.
Great, thank you. Any questions?
More of a, well, yes. So it seems pretty clear today that the infrastructure that's in there was created for rain events that don't exist anymore. Like, they keep overflowing. Could we approach this differently, and potentially for the future, maybe not for this one, but I'd like to see the idea of, instead of channeling the water, could we try to create some kind of sponge effect in the street? It's a narrow street. Why not embrace it and have some landscaping on both sides with native grasses, plants, trees, bushes that would absorb much more of that water and have less runoff at the end? Because if we keep channeling, today you're doing it, you're oversizing it. In 10 years, we'll have to oversize it again. Instead of approaching it that way, could we think for the future, and maybe here, of embracing the narrowness of that street, but having it more open so that there's more land, plants, pervious surface for the water to infiltrate and not just rush to the end of the street?
I think that's a great idea for future projects and for streets not as narrow as this. This street in particular, you can't get 2 cars. You can't get
No,
2
you
cars
can't.
down
So
it.
why not
So-
embrace it and just like narrow the lane, give people space to like move over when there's 2 cars?
But there's not. That's just is that road there. That's
Yeah.
that's barely enough space for another car to get past, and that's going from side to side. So I don't see where we would have any additional room to add those types of features and allow for vehicles to get. Now, most of these houses don't have driveways, so their only parking is on the street. But I agree with you on taking that course of action for future projects where, we're currently in design on a whole bunch of projects utilizing that type of infrastructure instead of just constantly putting things in a catch basin and sending it downstream.
Yeah.
I totally agree with you on that, and it's something that, internally at DPW, we definitely would do for future projects, but I don't know if it's going to help us on this project, because the other thing is something like that on this project turns, a $20,000 project into a $250,000 project.
Yeah, but if we have to redo it 5 times, the cost becomes similar to the $250,000 one. It's more about long-term planning ahead and redoing it $20,000, $30,000, 5, 6, X times, rather than doing it upfront. It's a different approach, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, no, I totally, I get it. Yeah.
Thank you.
You have to leave.
Sorry.
Yeah, you're good.
Sort of along those same lines, we kind of had a whole bunch of different ideas we kind of threw at you at the site walk. Was there anything that occurred to you after that site walk that seemed like a little adjustment you could do to this plan? I mean, the idea that I had in my head was like a swale, real rock swale going from the edge of the road all the way to the river.
Right.
Or to the mill pond there. But was there any improvements that you would make at this moment?
We did look at that.
Yeah.
The issues that we had with that is the slope, and I understand the idea of doing something that kind of meanders. I generally, and with the issues that we were having with that, looking at it in more detail, was you get the effect of, because the velocities are so high coming off of that I don't know how we could keep it into where it's just going to flip over, jump over and then create a straight line going down and scour it anyways. So, but we did look at that as an option. There wasn't too many more other options other than, the big goal was to realign the discharge area so that it was back to this, as close to the center of the city right away as possible. Yet still there was concern of shortening up the line from, instead of being 40 feet, say 30 feet, and having it discharge uplands of the sewer manhole, and then having infiltration there, because that uphill sewer manhole is not one of those watertight ones that's similar to the one that's pretty much in the pond. So we didn't want to short circuit and discharge the drainage into the sewer system again, which is exactly what we designed to get away from back when we did the first design of this project.
Sorry, could you clarify that the 2 sewer manholes that are like to the right of the outflow on the drawing, those are both watertight, so to speak, and then the one just north of it is not?
That's correct.
Okay.
Because the elevations, those are at elevation 5 or 6 versus 8, 9. So the elevation difference was about 3 feet. So that one did not get a watertight cover.
And what do those manholes actually access? Is it?
The sewer mains for the sewer main that's coming down Whidden Street. They tie in to that, the one that's pretty close to where we're proposing the riprap outlet, and then, yep, that one, and then that shoots off to the right, past that one. It goes through there and into that sewer main. I don't have drawn on this, but that sewer main is the main that connects along the entire South Mill Pond side that, handles part of Marcy, Franklin Road, Franklin Street, and then continues on down to Melcher, to Wentworth, and that all goes towards Parrot Ave parking lot, where it then changes direction and starts heading towards the wastewater treatment facility. So that handles, that line that comes, that parallels South Mill Pond, handles all of that, the sewer for, say 200 houses, maybe more.
And then gets kind of pumped at some point, right? Because it's so low.
It must get pumped.
Yeah.
Where does, I'm not sure exactly where, but once you get to Parrot Ave parking lot, it's like 12 feet deep. It's pretty deep there. I think, I'm not exactly sure at what point. It might actually get all the way down
It goes
to
that way.
Mechanic Street pump station before it actually has to pump over to the Pierce Island.
It's super cool. It's kind of fascinating.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that.
But it's like so deep underneath that it's not necessarily having to climb up that, like.
Right, well, just because of the topography, so as it starts going, it goes down towards Junkins, so it's constantly going downhill, then it hits Pear Ave parking lot, then the line, even though it's gravity, goes up towards, like Court Street. But the grade there, Court Street's higher, so it's even getting deeper and deeper, because it's still gravity until it gets all the way down to Mechanic Street Pump Station. So that's why just before Mechanic Street, the topography there, it dives down so that it kind of comes in line. But at some of these places, we're 12, 15 feet deep with the sewer main.
It's kind of fascinating.
Yeah, it's weird to think.
I mean, and I'll just say, I mean, folks ask us questions all the time, whatever their kind of conservation concern is in Portsmouth. That's kind of part of our role as commissioners, is to just kind of hear what people are interested in.
Yeah.
And so I have gotten questions about just the CSOs that still exist into the mill ponds. I mean, while we have you here, would you mind just sharing kind of when are those triggered, and like where are the like pinch points that are leading to that?
I can share a little bit of knowledge
Yeah.
of that. The city engineer, Eric Fiedler, has a much better knowledge of that. But generally what happens is when we have a large stormwater event, and even though the city's made vast improvements on our sewer water separation, sewer stormwater separation, because in the past, a lot of catch basins dumped directly into sewer main. That was the situation here. And by taking those offline and separating them, we have quite a few, much fewer CSOs where the stormwater event creates a situation where, I hate to use the word burp, but it ends up having to burp
Right.
and discharge into South Mill Pond. But my understanding is, and as I said, Eric Fiedler would know more about this, is I believe we've only had 2 this year of those situations. We send out all the notices that it's required by law and everything, which is down substantially from even 5-10 years ago. There was much more, and that's also taking into a consideration that we're seeing much more of these high volume rain events than we did 5, 10, 15 years ago. So it shows how much improvement we've made just by doing the sewer drainage separation. I'm not exactly sure where the pinch points are in that system, particular to the CSOs for South Mill Pond. That I don't have the best knowledge on, but I can definitely find that out.
Yeah. Or even just like where they come out. Like, is it on the middle school side, or is it on the downstream?
It is on the middle school side. There's, I think, 3 outfalls there that are identified for those types of events and things like that. But as I've been told, is the tidal influx of the water coming in and out of the pond is that, it really does flush
Right.
things out in substantially quickly. And so, again, I don't want to speak too much that's beyond my understanding of that, but yes, that's where that's where those outfalls are that do have the CSOs there. I think there's 3 right by the middle school side.
Okay. So kind of anything we can do to keep stormwater out of the sewers anywhere in the vicinity is probably going to help that
Yes.
particular issue.
Absolutely, yes.
Yeah. Okay. I appreciate that you're being careful with that.
Yeah.
And explaining it to us. Thank you. As somebody who grew up in Portsmouth and went to that school,
Yeah.
it is a million times better. It
Yeah.
smells much better than it did.
Yeah, go ahead, Barbara.
I think this might have already been covered. I apologize, but I want to clarify. So the area that's grass now, above where you're going to have the apron and the outlet, is going to go back to grass and be
That's correct,
maintained,
yes.
mowing it as before. So my other question is, two things. One is that you have a silt fence down below during construction.
Yes.
And I was wondering, on your plans, your specs have really also mentioned silt socks, I think?
Oh,
Or
silt logs.
filtration? Okay.
Yeah.
So,
So that's a very similar type of erosion control measures. It's as a silt fence.
yeah, only better. So, I mean, I'm thinking, usually it seems like most people are moving further and further away from the silt fences because it's just not as effective. I think the city's going to do the construction, so I wouldn't worry about that it's not going to be installed correctly or anything like that. But it seems like such a steep area why you're doing the work. If you do get an event, I think that having some sort of silt socks along there instead of the silt fence would be better. It's just a recommendation, and I wouldn't require that, but.
And honestly, these are our standard details for the city, and I like to put both in on projects that we bid out, because a lot of times contractors always ask, can we put in silt fence versus silt logs or silt socks or something like that. And so it was just our standard detail that we can put in, but we can definitely just call out the silt socks instead.
That would be great if you can, and because I don't want to screw up your budget. But and the other question I have is, there's a reference on C300 to using fertilizer. So,
Yeah,
although
we
you want things
can
to
take that out. Yes. I understand.
I mean, you want things to get established, and I understand that, but there is restrictions on that. So just to explore that and
Yes,
try to
and
update
generally,
that.
we've been working with our city, not our arborist, Corin, getting a good loam spec so that we don't have to add fertilizers, that we have a good organic loam spec in there. So I will put that in there and take out the fertilizer notes.
Anybody else? We ready for a motion? Who would like to make it? Sure. Sure. Can you come up to the microphone and state your name? Thank you.
My name is Chris Daniel. I've been at 50 Whidden for 12 years now, and had a chance to, in the first few years, see what it was like before Mark's work went into effect. And when you talked about these events, the heavy rain events, really just cut a V, cut down to gravel, very unattractive. There was really very little that was living in the pathway, and that went right down to the pond. When they came and manicured the area with some loam, the grass, I think, has absorbed quite a bit of that water that comes down, and actually with the foliage there, it keeps it very green and very nice. So aesthetically, it's infinitely better than it was before the changes were done. So the rerouting, and Mark had talked about curbing, just keeping that flow continuing into that area. The other thing, Stuart, sorry, I don't know everyone's name or anyone's name, talked about vegetation on the side. That's, I'd say, wishful thinking. It's just a very narrow street, and as Mark was pointing out, when you're driving on the street, you're watching your mirrors, because anybody that's parked on the street, it would be easy to collide with, and there have been 2 minor accidents since I've been there, trying people backing in and out. So the consideration of having plantings it would be a challenge. As a matter of fact, even today, one of my neighbors removed what were planter boxes in front of the house after multiple attempts to use those for plantings and replaced it with some brickwork. So there's now more of a hardscaping that goes along the roadway. And I think it would be nice if it were 30 feet wider to put in plantings. I'm a real fan of plantings and a bit fanatical with that. I just think with the physical constraints that what we have there is probably what's going to be best and would be a challenge, having seen these boxes out, and the boxes, even with the plantings, you tended to get more dirt that came onto the road on a regular basis. So, you know, if we could go back 200 years and change things on that street, that would be ideal, but I don't think we can do that. And all the house, I think the property lines are right on the face of the house. You know, it comes straight down, and most people have sort of made that in consideration. The city's been actually very good and allowed some extension out into that property. I'd be one of them who, when I bought the house, there was nice fencing, and I think aesthetically has really made the neighborhood much nicer by the city allowing that earlier fencing. It really adds to the aesthetic of the neighborhood. So what's been done, I think, is very good. And anyway, there's my 2 cents. It's great work, and I think what Mark's plan is I think is a very good one. You know, having watched the water cascade and seeing how he's rationally worked it out, I think it would be a very suitable for that strip of land and getting the water off. That's it. Thanks.
Thank All right, who would like to make a motion? Yeah.
I'll make a motion to approve the Whidden Street State Wetlands Bureau application, or make a recommendation to approve it.
Second.
Any further discussion?
I was just going to add the fertilizer one.
Oh, yeah, so the stipulation of the no fertilizer, and also to use the silt sock instead of the silt fence if possible.
Yeah, I mean, I really think it's their call, but it's a suggestion more than anything, so I don't know if I want to say stipulation necessarily.
If
If
possible.
If possible.
Yeah. If it doesn't blow the budget, I guess. Okay.
Yeah, nope. Both of which.
Any other stipulations that people want to add? No? Okay. All in favor? Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay. Other business. I think all we have was just to mention again that we are looking for an alternate, if anybody knows anybody. And if you do know someone, either you can pass the name on to any of us, or you can send them an email and tell them what it's like, and then, you know, give them our names, or I think they can just go straight onto the website and apply, right?
Yep.
Put in an application. They don't even have to talk to us if they don't want to. Just saying, we're trying to make it as easy as possible. Yeah. Do you have anything, Kate?
Nothing.
Wow.
Yeah, it's something I
Yes.
can't stop. So I was going to ask Kate to send something out on this. I received a notice saying that there's a DOT Route 1 committee kind of working on redoing parts of Route 1. And this area is 1.7 mile segment, and it's looking at traffic safety and capacity, but the committee does include the bike group and one person from the Conservation Commission, which had been me, but has sort of like not been that active in it. So, so anyway, they're doing the City Council work session on November 18th at 6 p.m. If anybody wants to go to learn more about what they're going to be doing and change. It's going to be pretty dramatic changes there.
Is it for input at this point, or is it just to?
I think so, yeah. It's still, I mean, now they have something to present, so, but.
So we should try to have a representative?
Yeah, and I can go, and just, but if anybody's interested in it.
You're still the official representative.
I think so. haven't done a good job, but.
It's done better than any of us, so. Okay, great.
Which section of Route 1 is it?
Okay, so it is from south of Ocean Road to Wilson Road. So,
Oh, way out there.
yeah,
Okay.
it's a ways up, it's not, yeah.
Yeah, that's like through Elwyn.
But it's going to be continuing down the whole way, so
Cool.
eventually.
I feel like this has been going on for a while, this.
The planning's been going on since before COVID.
I was gonna say, I feel like I've heard about this multiple times.
I was interested.
Because Allison, I think, was part of that too,
Yeah.
that group, yeah. Okay. Anything else? Meeting adjourned.
Did you guys have?